From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is the original podcast on consumption, your weekly podcast about consumption. And with me this week, as always, is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. He's the authority on Michigan beer, and his name is Sean. How are you doing today, Sean?
John, stop with the kicking.
Huh?
Stop with the kicking.
Who am I kicking?
Me. Stop it.
I kicked you?
Yeah. Ouch. You did it again. Stop with the kicking, please. The audience they'll get it at the end.
Oh, okay. I'm assuming you're adding some ninja sounds or some shit into this?
I'm tying something in at the end like a good comedian, because that's what I am.
Oh.
A good comedian.
Gotcha.
Yep. I laugh at all my jokes. They're always great.
Speaking of your jokes, how's your week going?
Well, yeah. Crummy Movie March has been a hit, but the weather's been trash.
It's been crummy weather March so far for both of us.
We pushed this recording back a couple days because of all the weather, and you had a bit of a power outage, right? I know I had a tree fall, like a big arborvitae. It fell next to my garage, and the other side it almost fell on my car. Nonetheless.
Yeah, I had power surges, which would have been equally as annoying if we started. It would have been a disaster. I probably would have ended up getting drunk and mad and just kind of bitch for an hour. So maybe it would have been a good episode.
Yeah, we may have been able to save it for a shoot the shit episode instead of a Crummy Movie March episode.
Yeah. Have you watched anything between storms and power outages and whatever other bullshit that the state's throwing at us right now?
I have watched so much. I really have, actually. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I've fit a lot of it in the last couple of days. So we talked about it a couple weeks ago. We talked at Knock at the Cabin, the new M. Night Shyamalan movie. I think last time we recorded, I decided, you know what? Let's see what this Knock at the Cabin's all about. It's got Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, I think, the guy from Mindhunters, and he plays, I don't know, Kristoff in Frozen. I think that's who plays Kristoff.
I know he's in Frozen. I don't know who he plays, though.
Rupert Grint, isn't that his name? The guy from Harry Potter, the red-haired guy?
Sure.
So he's in it. It was okay. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it wasn't really, I think it's marketed as more of a thriller, but it really wasn't. I don't know. It was kind of more like a drama with some thriller elements to it. There wasn't really all that much horror. It was okay. I mean, as far as M. Night Shyamalan movies go, the twist wasn't super, like it didn't have that. It's got to have the twist, and it's really whatever. It wasn't out of left field twist, and it's based off of a book. So I think he was kind of reined in a little bit. I watched the story of Pennywise, the story of it, which is a documentary. It's all behind the scenes and the making of the 1990 It ABC miniseries. Has a lot of making of, behind the scenes footage, interviews with the cast. They talk about kind of the cast that came in, the writing process. They talk a lot about Stephen King. That was interesting. It was a little bit on the long side. I mean, I'm not really that invested in the It miniseries. I've watched the first recent movie.
I'd be more interested in behind the scenes with Tim Curry being weird than I would be the rest of It.
Well, they had an interview with him. I mean, he's interviewed for it. You know, he's had a stroke since, I don't know, a few years ago. So he's a little limited, but he's in it a lot. They have a lot of footage of him and the test footage and how they were going to do the makeup and, you know, all that stuff. So it's like, if you're into It, especially that one, the Tim Curry It, then this would be something for you to watch. I just finished, like literally just a few minutes ago, finished the newest WWE biography, which is about China. That was a pretty good one. It's been a really good season so far. And on Saturday, I watched the UFC 285 event. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big John Jones fan. I would have liked to have seen him get put on his ass. But yeah, I don't know if you know I don't know if I can just tell you.
I don't even remember the card. Why don't you just tell me about the UFC event?
It was Shevchenko was defending, the women's champion was defending against a Mexican fighter, and I can't remember her name. It starts with an E, I want to say. It's like Esco or something like that. And it was John Jones versus Cyril Gane for the championship, for the heavyweight championship. It was the first fight. It was John Jones' first fight in 3 years. John Bones Jones' first fight in 3 years. And the first fight at heavyweight for him. So I was looking forward to kind of seeing. It was a pretty decent card. It wasn't a great card, but it was pretty good. And yeah, it ended really quick. The main event ended like 240 or 204 or something like that.
Alexa Grasso was the co-main event.
Yeah, Grasso. There we go. Did I say Esco? Grasso. Close enough.
Grasso. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see any of that. I'll probably get around to watching that later on. So I'm still an episode back from you on the WWE thing. I watched the Jake the Snake episode, which almost plays more like an intervention episode than it does a WWE episode. It spends so much time on his out of the ring stuff, which kind of makes sense. I mean, he's got a interesting life and he's still not dead to tell you about it. So I guess that kind of helps. But that one was pretty good. And he was one of the guys that when I was a kid and started discovering wrestling, he was still kind of in his heyday. So I kind of enjoyed watching him more than some of the newer ones. Like I honestly don't think I know who China is. So I'll watch it and probably remember when I see it, but I can't think of who it is off the top of my head.
You know what's funny about that Jake the Snake one is that he felt like he was one of those guys that was around forever,
Oh, yeah.
but his run was actually, I mean, it was like a few years. I think they said 4 or 6 years, but it just seemed like he was always there.
Well, you got to think of the marketing at the time for it too. Like those Jake the Snake toys, like those big stuffed animal dudes and like what are they, like 10-inch like rubber figures that you could probably like shoot through a wall.
I think he was after those rubber figures, but he was definitely one of those like stuffed animal kind of dudes.
But those things, they probably sold those like for like 2 decades before they started. So that era, like they probably kept those figures in circulation in one way or another for a decade past when they were actually wrestling, just because people knew who they were. It's not like now where you can go look up every wrestler and see everything, like, you know, just by scrolling through Twitter or something like that. There are only so many guys that actually got TV time, and he was one of them.
Those big, heavy ass rubber figures. What side anecdote? My friend had, I believe it was either Big John Studd or King Kong Bundy, and for some reason we were just like throwing them up in the air and seeing if we could catch them. And I remember that was the first. I had glasses at the time, you know, spoiler, and trying to catch whoever it was, knocked the lens. The first time ever a lens was knocked out of my glasses. Not to be the last time, but that was the first time a lens got knocked out of my glasses when it fell on my face from, you know, throwing it. It seemed like you were throwing it in the clouds, but it was probably more like 5 feet. Give me some credit. It was probably more than 3 feet, but it probably wasn't all that high. But yeah. But anyways, those big rubber figures, like you wouldn't, 10 years after they came out, no one knew besides the name, again, who Big John Studd was or Junkyard Dog, you know. My dad's going to kill me.
Or suplex you. I found a pretty fun movie on Tubi called Seed People, which some like mid-'80s, like, are you familiar with it? You're nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, I know of the movie. They kind of like grow out of the ground or something. They're these little like orbs.
They're like
spheres.
alien things that like shoot down to Earth and plant in the ground and come out. What makes it really fun is the costuming in it, because the Seed People are clearly guys who are kind of like sitting cross-legged, but they force them to walk on their hands. So you can tell the way they're very like bottom heavy, the way that they're put together, but they still kind of lurch around and attack people. And it just, I don't know, the costuming is actually, if you look at just the mask, like what these faces are supposed to be, it's very like 1980s Muppet monster movie type stuff. But the way it's done, for what I'm assuming was like a no budget movie, it worked pretty well. I've watched a hell of a lot worse just over the course of Crummy Movie March. Started watching The Last of Us, which I'm not going to go into too much detail with because that's something we wanted to kind of cover more in depth once the season wraps up. But I could say just from this, I don't want to do more than like 2 or 3 episodes in a day before I'm kind of like tapped out on that show. I'll say this far into it, the quality of the show is pretty good. I'm very aware of the fact that I'm watching a show that's based off a video game, just the way they kind of move from area to area and kind of progress the story. I'm like, this kind of feels like how a video game would flow.
I've heard a couple people say that, like a couple people that haven't played the game have said this feels really, I don't really see it that way, but I've heard that from a few people.
That might be a byproduct of me not playing the video game.
Yeah.
Like I haven't played a video game in a really long time, so maybe I'm wrong, but it's how it feels to me. So anyway, I watched Cocaine Bear and I was amused by it because since I don't know if we're going to do a full on story about that, I was amused by it. I mean, the super short version of it needs more Cocaine Bear and less humans. Like, I don't know why you're selling me a ticket to a movie called Cocaine Bear and then trying to develop multiple subplots around humans. That seemed kind of like a waste of time because I bought a ticket for a movie called Cocaine Bear. What do you think I'm here to see?
Yeah, but how much of a movie would it be if they didn't do that? I mean, oh, cool. A bear gets into cocaine. It stomps around. Awesome. I mean, I don't know.
I don't really care.
I'm a curmudgeon. I think that it's a stupid concept to begin with. So, and maybe I'm just being an asshole. I'd probably really enjoy it if I watched it, but I feel like I won't give it a chance. I don't know. Maybe I'll see it when it gets a streaming release or, something.
I mean, I'm not going to put words into your mouth, but I think you would moderately enjoy it. I think you're probably just being a curmudgeon in the sense that it's popular right now, and that's why
Maybe.
You're pissed off about it.
Jaded. I'm just jaded. That's what it is.
Again, we've seen far worse movies over the course of Crummy Movie March, and this movie's not going to, although I would like to see this movie win an Oscar just because I would love to see someone have to read that Cocaine Bear won an Oscar. That would make me very happy. I don't think that's going to happen.
Are you disparaging Black Devil Doll from Hell, saying it's not one of the masterpieces of our time? Is that what you're trying to say?
I am absolutely saying that.
I can't disagree with you.
I will take
great.
15 Cocaine Bears over one Black Devil Doll from Hell in kilo form. But yeah, that's kind of all I've kind of poked around with this week. I mean, I managed to find time to actually watch something between power outages, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah. But we do have a topic this week.
We do have a topic this week. So this week, we're talking about The Perfect Weapon. Not the Steven Seagal one. Break out Steven Seagal voice if necessary. But not the Steven Seagal one. This is The Perfect Weapon from 1991. This is a movie about an expert in kenpo karate avenging his hometown Okay.
You can say that again.
I'm going to start this over. So this movie is called The Perfect Weapon. It's from 1991 and it is a movie about an expert in kenpo karate avenges his Koreatown friend slain by a Jesus
a monster.
Christ.
He's slain by a monster. You want me to tackle it for you?
I don't know why I can't read the sentence. You might as well go ahead and do it.
Okay. An expert in kenpo karate avenges his Koreatown friend slain by a mobster in Los Angeles.
Well, I'm not the only one who always broke up a little bit on this.
Well, I felt like I had to do it slowly because you were having such problems with it that I thought I was going to trip over it too.
I don't know if that really accurately, I mean, I guess that describes this movie, but you're better at the storyline stuff. Do you want to try to tackle that while we're on the subject and we can kind of break into this?
Yeah, that's a really, that one sentence is a really condensed version, I think, of what the movie is, but we'll read the storyline. This is the first time we put eyes on it. So it says, Jeff, a young delinquent, is enrolled by his father in a kenpo school in the hopes of teaching the boy some self-discipline. Years later, Jeff's mentor, Kim, is being threatened by one of the Korea mafia families. Jeff tries to help his old friend, but is too late to prevent Kim's death at the hands of an unknown hitman. Vowing revenge, Jeff takes on all the families, using his martial arts skills to find the man who killed his friend. I have to say, this is the perfect example of someone that should have just minded their own business. Jeff gets involved in the whole thing, and he is the reason that his friend gets killed, and his friend tells him before he gets killed, he says, listen, you're an outsider. I don't need you doing this because they're going to see it as I hired you to defend me when all I need to do is just pay them the money, Lebowski, and they will go away. And if he would have just minded his own goddamn business, nobody would have gotten hurt. Well, I mean, maybe Kim's, antique vases or whatever would have got smashed around. But a perfect example, just to jump in a little bit, there is a scene when the mafia dudes are in Kim's shop and they're busting stuff up and they break a window and and what is Jeff's outside. He just happens to be coming to visit. He grabs the stick that the guy was breaking all the stuff with and he pulls the guy with the stick through the window and instead of just breaking like a pane of glass, he destroys the whole window, comes in and smashes the entire store, beating all these guys up.
I mean, the one thing you can definitely say about this movie is the fight scenes are just out of their mind, like insane. For every single one of them, there's never a point where there's a fight scene that is like your typical bar fight where one guy punches the other guy and they both kind of go buy each other a beer and that's the end of the fight. That's not what happens in this movie. Even when you break it down to its most basic level, which might be my favorite scene of the movie, where the football player slaps the shit out of his little brother or whatever he is. One, because he hits him so hard, like he knocks him out and like breaks his face open. I was like, for nothing. And then he like borderline murders the guy in the middle of a football field by kicking him like 8 times in the head or something like that, like shattering his football helmet and removing the
he practically splits the helmet in half.
Yeah, he does kick the face mask off, which, I mean, I suppose that's possible, but I think that's pretty unlikely.
Well, you know, this movie starts, any movie that starts with I Got the Power by Snap, you know it's going to be a banger. He's doing the kata in the living room. We should say this movie stars Jeff Speakman. This is Jeff Speakman. It's not the first movie he was ever in, but this is his first starring role, and Jeff Speakman is a multi-degree black belt in both American Kenpo karate, and I had to read this on IMDb because I didn't know this part. Tenchi Goju Kai is a different martial art, which I'm totally unfamiliar with. But like I said, the intro of this movie is him basically, his job is he shovels dirt, because that's pretty much all he does for the 3 seconds they show him on his job. And then the rest of the movie is him doing like katas in his living room, which is very elegant for a guy that just shovels dirt. But he's this martial arts whiz.
Very spacious living room.
Oh yeah,
too.
It's like you could set up VR in there. That'd be a perfect living room for a VR setup these days.
I do like when he flips the couch on its side and starts using it to beat the shit out of.
He uses like Rumble in the Bronx, where Jackie Chan like beats up that wooden like training dummy.
Yeah,
he's like slapping it around and doing all this stuff with it.
He's got, I don't remember if it's like some nunchuck thing or like just some sticks or whatever, but yeah, it's splitting the leather. There's all kinds of dust and shit coming out of it. It's very animated, but very comedically over the top.
Yeah. Let's hope the cleaning lady's coming tomorrow, because that's a dusty mess.
Well, plus, like, if the idea of this is like a training exercise, I don't think too many people that you smack around with your stick are going to respond the same way as your couch.
Jeff Speakman in this movie, you're talking about I'm not quite sure if it's, like you said, nunchucks or those sticks, but he is like a big fan of the broken broomstick, 2 pieces of a broomstick beating the shit out of somebody. He's just goes to town with those things. When you see Jeff Speakman holding 2 like dowels, basically like thick dowels, you just watch out, because he's on the warpath. He's going to beat some ass with these things. He's going to beat somebody like a drum.
Pretty much. On the topic of Jeff Speakman, his most recent film is called Striking Range. And yeah, I said that right. I thought I couldn't read it yet. Striking Range. He plays a character named Kilmer.
I was on
I
was on a quest, because how was it? You got a spittoon over there?
I got a dog that ran into something.
I was on a quest to find Jeff Speakman movies because of this movie. He is in so many movies. If you look at his IMDb and what he's quote unquote known for, there's The Perfect Weapon, The Expert, which nobody's ever heard of, which came out only 4 years after this, Lionheart, which was not a starring thing. His role was Mansion Security Man, and then Running Red, which was another movie. But his movie list, if you look on here, they start in 87. But again, this is his first starring role. And I'm thinking 2006 was probably his last role, like his last starring. Well, it's his last thing on here.
It's his last credit. Yeah.
It is. His movies have practically fallen off the face of the earth. And I was on this, like I said, on this quest to figure out what the hell happened to Jeff Speakman, because this is a pretty big start for his career. This movie got kind of hyped a little bit. I mean, it had advertising, marketing behind it. I remember seeing the trailers for this when it came out.
I saw a couple things about him and about what was supposed to happen with him with this movie. I mean, this movie was profitable. I mean, it made like $14 million on like a $3 million budget, which for a guy that's his first starring role, that's not terrible, especially in 1991 dollars.
Yeah.
He was contracted to do 3 movies with whichever studio owns the right or owned the rights to this.
Paramount.
I think Paramount. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to market him as like the next, coincidentally, Steven Seagal or the next Van Damme. So they wanted him to be the next like white guy doing kung fu, basically. For whatever reason, that to be honest, it probably has to do with a lot of how this movie played out, which isn't necessarily his fault, like some of the shortcomings of this movie. But the second movie that he was supposed to be, he had a 3-movie deal with Paramount, I guess. The second one was supposed to be a direct sequel to this, so the perfecter weapon.
The more perfect weapon.
The even better perfect weapon. I don't know. And then he was supposed to be the lead in Speed, which, obviously he did not get the lead in Speed. So I don't know what happened with him as far as like why he, for lack of better wording, kind of fell off the face of the earth as far as being like a leading man in like major movies. But of all the things that, and I'm sure we'll come to them, of all the things you could say that might be problems with this movie, I don't think he's one of them at all.
No, I mean, for a movie, for your first starring role in a movie, I remember him being a lot worse of an actor than he is. I mean, he's very serviceable. There's his performance on its own.
For this kind of movie, he's
fine. Yeah, he fills the role. And just to kind of point out some of the other people in this movie, like Jeff Speakman's obviously the big main dude. We have Mako, which if you've seen him, you know who he is. We have James Hong, which he's just been in like any movie with an Asian actor of any kind of Asian descent. James Hong is probably in the movie as an Asian guy.
When he popped up, I was like, God, I've seen this guy in so many things, and I can't think of his name.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like 94 now, and I think he was in Everything Everywhere All at Once, too, so he's getting like another minor renaissance. But the one that, to me, is the most puzzling in this movie, we have Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa is in it. He's, again, a guy who's in a lot of films. He's of Asian descent, obviously, a lot of movies that are either supposed to be Korean, he's supposed to be Korean in this movie, or Japanese, or, Asian, basically. Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa, which I can't believe I've said 2 times flawlessly in a row, is in that movie. And the one that I find the most puzzling in this movie is Mariska Hargitay is in this movie, but she has no lines.
She's barely in this movie, and she's one of the top billed people.
Yeah, she's the 5th billed person, and she is on screen, no shit, 30 seconds max. Like, that might even be 3 times as long as she's actually in this movie.
Okay, I was wondering about that because I saw her getting billed early. Like, she's one of the second or third names that's in the like credits in the movie. And even on the IMDb page, which clearly we're both looking at, she's 5th on there or 3rd on there, depending on how you want to stack stuff, I guess. I was like, how come I'm not seeing Detective What's-Her-Face like in this at all? And then she pops up briefly at the end. Like, they kind of do like the Star Wars, like, the thing where they get the medals ceremony at the end.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically that, but with like kung fu stuff. And she's there. I was like, is that where she got like top billing in this movie, or did I just like blank out and miss her like multiple times throughout this movie?
She is in that scene at the end, and Kim's funeral. They show her walking and looking. She looks over at Jeff Speakman, and that's another like 5-second thing. The other person that's in this that is like the main like bad guy, the boss of the movie, is Professor Toru Tanaka. And he used to be a wrestler. Again, he's one of those dudes that if you've seen him, you know who he is.
I kept thinking he was Odd Job
from James Bond.
Like every time I saw it, I was like, did they get Odd Job in this movie?
I think this was like one of his last movies. He died fairly recently after that. And let's see, this movie came out in 91. He died in, 90. I guess he died in 2000, but he cannot move. Like, there is a scene where a car rolls over. There's a scene where a car rolls over and it's upside down and he has to get out. And I was convinced it was a stunt double, like getting out of the car, just how like badly he moves. And the scene when he gets taken care of, Jeff Speakman's taking the double broomsticks, right? And he's like knocking him on the knees, and it just sounds like a wood block. Every time his knee gets hit, it sounds like somebody's, I don't know, more cowbell or something. It's a ridiculous sound.
I also like that John Dye in this movie looks so much like James Spader, but is not. But like, I seriously went through this, like waiting for him to start complaining about a cashmere sweater that his brother stretched the hole in the neck out or something like that.
To me, he looks like, well, 2 things. First, to me in this movie, he looks a lot like Peter Serafinowicz. Is that his name? That English actor he's the roommate in Shaun of the Dead, the one that dies like really early.
He's not as bulked up as that, but I can see the face in it. Sure.
And the other thing that he looks like is a penis, because his hair If you ever thought that a person could look like a penis, just look at this guy's hair in this movie.
I think he looks like James Spader in the episode of Seinfeld that he was on.
I could see that. I didn't think of it, but I could see that.
I would almost go like to the point where I was watching this, I was like, he really looks like James Spader in this. I thought it was him and and looked it up to confirm that it was like, oh, cool. I was like, oh, I don't know who the fuck this is at all.
Yeah. Every time I see this movie, his hair, I can't get over it. It looks like a circumcised penis.
It's that 90s, like, you know, heart thing that was really popular up until Kurt Cobain died.
He looks like he got, I don't know, one of the Imperial soldiers, like the one on the Death Star that with the black helmet. That's like, they put that on his head. They just cut around it. You know, it looks like a penis. Like I cannot not see it.
So Detective Penis and Jeff Sanders,
they're brothers
on a revenge flick.
Yeah.
So we haven't even talked about what this movie is about because there's not really a lot that this movie is about. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, this is about as straightforward as anything that we've watched.
Yeah, it is. This movie is like, you can think of some movies as being, I don't know, like an S-curve, right? You kind of go one direction and, something happens and you change and you go another direction, or maybe another twist happens and then it kind of comes back around. This movie is about, I can think that this movie is about as straight of a line, like from point A to point B. Jeff's in town, his friend, his former mentor, whoever, gets killed, and he solves the crime, or he like tries to figure it out. And there's no mysterious element. He just goes from one place to the next, to the next, to the next, leaving a trail of people beaten up, bloodied. He gets beat up a few times too, but that's like the trail. You know, he's just goes here, beats this guy up, goes here, beats that guy up, beats this guy up, gets some information, goes to this place, almost beats up the wrong guy, and then figures out the right guy to beat up and beat them up. I mean, A to B to C.
Did you ever see the movie Ong Bak?
With Tony Jaa?
So Tony Jaa, yeah.
No, I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
So it's actually a pretty good movie, if it's the movie that I'm thinking it is. And maybe I'm going to quote this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If I remember right, this movie is like the first 10 minutes is, you know, typical martial arts movie stuff. And then they kill this elephant, and the rest of the movie, the rest of its runtime is Tony Jaa running around screaming, give me back my elephant, just beating the fuck out of people. That's pretty much what this movie reminded me of, minus the elephant.
Give me back my Kim.
Yeah, I might be confusing it with a different movie, but I'm pretty sure it was Ong Bak.
I do like that this movie does throw in some kind of comedic things. You know, there's the part where he finds out that Kim is killed and he's trying to chase after somebody, and these kind of white trash biker dudes accost him and they want his wallet. And he's like, you want my wallet? Here. And he throws it on the ground. Then as they're like looking at it, he beats them all up and is unscathed. He like
produces a couple sticks and
and goes to town beating the drum again and again. There's an incident or like a scene where his brother is a cop and he's on the case, right? Because he knows Kim, and he goes into this Korean restaurant and he's trying to ask the guy about, do you know Kim, the guy who owns the store across the street? And the guy is like, oh, kimchi, yes. He like tries to fill this food order and he makes him pay, and then the brother feels obligated to pay him. And then at the end, the guy in perfect English goes, oh, thanks, have a nice day, or whatever he says, you know, and the guy, hoo, 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 doo, 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 doo. You know, you'd expect to hear, I don't know, sad trombone or something as he walks out. But there are little elements of comedy. One thing that I think is quite possibly unintentionally hilarious that I think is amusing. Jeff Speakman plays Jeff Sanders. He's this he becomes a high school kind of track star, and he's known for the pole vault. And there is a scene where Jeff needs to get into this warehouse, and there's a real high fence, and he just happens to find like a straight pipe, like a conduit pipe or a fence post or something, and he runs, and there's a perfect crack in the
it's like
asphalt,
a 30-foot tall fence post,
and he does this perfect pole vault right over the barbed wire, you know, the razor wire, and the security guard is just like, he's super surprised that this guy just makes it over this 30-foot fence. He's like, oh, did you see that? Oh yeah, I wouldn't know where the guy came from. It'd probably freak me out. I'd probably scream. And he just punches him in the face and goes in the warehouse like that. And the warehouse scene, the last 10 to 15 minutes, basically from the warehouse scene on, you could just start the movie. Kim gets killed, show the warehouse scene. It's like the most exciting climax of the entire movie, I think. I mean, it's obviously is the climax, but it's like the most action-packed part of the whole movie is the last 15 minutes. Just him beating up people left and right.
Yes, but that's really the majority of what this movie is him just beating the shit out of people left and right. There's a really spectacular over-the-top car chase in the middle of it that you mentioned where Tanaka somehow manages to stand up. You know, it's got that in it. In a lot of ways, it's a very typical, I think this is 91, but it's a very typical, 80s, 90s cop/revenge type film where it's literally just scene to scene. One guy walks in, sees 50 people in there and just says, do what I say. They say no, and he beats the fuck out of them and then just walks by like nothing happened. It's entertaining, that aspect. There's no real thinking that you need to put into this. I'd say the biggest downside with it is, although it's fun and it's got all that ass kicking left and right going on with it, it's not exactly something that's exceptionally memorable outside of the fact that it's just a bunch of ass kicking going on for hour and a half or whatever this movie is.
Yeah, I think it kind of reminds me a lot of Never Too Young to Die, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. And where I was kind of saying, who is this movie for? And we said, oh, it's probably more for the action crowd, somebody who was going to go in and see Commando. They've seen Commando, they want to see this. I feel like this fits that mold a little bit more because it is so mindless. It seems just like, the extension of the macho martial arts movie. Let's just go see this guy who's a physical specimen. I mean, he's in awesome shape.
Yeah.
Just beat the shit out of people and occasionally get punched here and there.
Well, and knowing that this movie was made and this guy was cast specifically to be Van Damme, Seagal, that type of guy. I mean, it fits. If you said, okay, we're going to make a movie to have our studio's action guy, which I guess is what it was. Touchstone or whatever owned Van Damme, and whoever Seagal did his shit with owned him. So they were like, well, we got to have that guy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when slashers were popular, New Line had Freddy, Paramount had Jason. Was it Universal had Myers?
I don't know. Somebody.
Whoever. Yeah, whoever it was. I mean, when that's kind of what it felt like in that sense. So I could see where the target audience is with this one quite a bit easier, but it doesn't really fix the shortcoming of, okay, you made a movie that has a lot of stuff in it, but it doesn't have a lot of sustenance in it at the same time. It's like the fast food version of a movie.
Yeah, that fast food is a really good description. It's very, like you said,
it's satisfying, but it's not very nurturing.
For the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's satisfying for the moment, but it's very forgettable when you're ready for the next course because it's just so straightforward. There's no, like we said, there's no twist. There's nothing.
There's not even really any
toes.
Character development. There's
not really.
Even of Jeff, the main character, Jeff, he wants revenge for Kim getting killed, but you're not really seeing anything okay, they have a little montage of him training and beating the shit out of his couch, but I don't know that I would call that character development or anything like that.
Yeah, the most you know about this guy is he was a troubled youth. His dad put him in the school to learn discipline, and then he, like you mentioned earlier, mentions that he's going to beat up the football player with one foot and ends up using both of his feet, but not his hands at all. And he almost kills this kid, and that shows his dad that he's not ready for this responsibility, and he kind of goes away to go live with Kim, basically. And that is the character development. I mean, he was a troubled kid who needed discipline. He learns it by shoveling dirt, and then he beats up his couch and then a bunch of other people in the process.
Explains why his couch is so dirty.
Yeah, all the dirt. He's beating the dirt out of it. Maybe he's the cleaning lady. Maybe it's not even his house.
See, and this is where the movie falls flat. There's no explanation of
whose couch is that?
Dirt, where the dirt's going. Yep, all this. We didn't learn any of these things.
How could you afford this big living room?
Yeah, that too. Yeah, but past that, again, this it is fun. It's just forgettable. It just kind of falls into that blend of how many, it's just like horror movies in a sense. How many movies came out between 1985 and probably 1998 that are some version of this kind of movie where it's just a bunch of random people get the shit beat out of them. Something blows up, couple gunshots, and then we climax with a bigger fight scene.
Are there a lot of guns in this movie? That you mentioned that.
No,
I tried to think.
The cop, his brother has one that comes out a couple times, but I think that's about it.
He's got one bullet. He's like Don Knotts and Mayberry. He's got to save
Yes.
that one bullet.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of. I'm pretty sure. What's his name? Taka, whatever.
Toru Tanaka.
Tanaka. I'm pretty sure he's got a gun, but I mean, it's not like it's not the focal point of this movie. It's not like Matrix where they fight guns with kung fu and it's okay.
It's not Equilibrium.
Yeah, that too.
You would think for it being L.A., there would be a lot more guns, but mostly as long as you have a broomstick.
If we learned anything by watching Cobra Kai, it's that karate trumps guns 100% of the time.
And knives and all that good stuff.
Hey,
Any
when
weapon.
karate shit's going on in California, real weapons just take a walk.
They lay them down.
Yeah. They can't, they say, whoa, can't get into that, man. There's some karate shit going on over there. I don't want no piece of that.
Hey, brother. No guns in this house, brother. We fight with broomsticks only.
Go beat the shit out of that couch, man. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to add to it. I mean, again, doesn't have a whole ton of stuff to really break down or kind of get into. It's just kind of a straightforward revenge movie, really.
It fits a B-movie action all the way.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
It looks great, but like you said, there's just not a whole lot of plot.
All right, you want to get into hot dogs? You want to start us off there? I don't
Yeah.
remember who started us last week.
It doesn't matter. I'll start with hot dogs. I think, I don't know, it's kind of like a good juxtaposition. I think it's funny to think that in 5 years, right, the same amount of time from the time that we went from Never Too Young to Die and a movie that we couldn't figure out who it was for, it was made for probably the same budget and, had some bankable
I bet you
stars.
Never Too Young to Die had a high. I probably
think
had a
had
higher
a
budget than this.
Look how far, and we go from Never Too Young to Die to The Perfect Weapon. Look how far action films came in those 5 years. I mean, it's only 5 years, but it feels like it's almost 10. Like Never Too Young to Die feels like it was a different era. So this is it's a well-made movie. As with all movies like this, it has its flubs. It's a little cheesy especially when you're working with a guy who's never helmed or never been the star of a movie before. It's very competent. Speakman isn't known for his acting skills, but I feel like he does a pretty good job. And it's surprising that they actually have some quote unquote stars listed in this film that barely show up. Like we said, Mariska Hargitay's listed like top 5 in this movie. Hiroyuki Tagawa is in this movie. He's barely there other than to be a bodyguard. But with all that said, it's very straightforward. It's very fun to just turn off your brain and watch. It's not a thinking movie. And there's a lot of really good action in the movie, all things considered. I give it 3 multi-angle kicks out of 6 hot dogs, using my patented Crummy Movie March hot dog scale.
So I was going to say one thing that might have helped this movie a little bit more might be getting like just a little bit better director behind it to kind of flush some of those things out. Maybe develop some of these characters. Looking at the director of this, the only other thing he's actually directed was the movie Kickboxer. So 2 years before this. Maybe this is just what he knows.
Yeah, it sounds like something that's very along the same vein.
I mean, the other things he has in here, as far as what he's known for, he was also a producer on Bloodsport, thoroughly entertaining. Kickboxer Vengeance, which isn't that old a movie. It's only 2016,
Yeah,
so what, 7 years? And then also in 2016, the movie Mother's Day, which seems like the odd duck out of this.
Yeah.
But I guess you got to make a paycheck at some point. Yeah, maybe a slightly better director with a little bit more vision or a little bit more control of, again, the character side of it might have helped this movie. All in all, though, this is I don't want to call it generic and have it come off sounding as a negative. I actually don't mean it as a negative in this context, but it's a kind of a generic, like early 90s kung fu flick, American kung fu. Yeah, I should stress that American kung fu flick that just involves some dude beating the shit out of stuff for hour and a half. It's kind of mindless. It's kind of fun. It's all those things like you mentioned. And you can see that at the negatives and the positives of that. It's not a bad movie in that sense. I mean, overall, I'd probably give it 5 hot dogs out of 10 dusty couches. Is it something that I'm going to like rush back to see again? Probably not. Is it something I would turn away from if it would happen to be on? Also, probably not. You can do a hell of a lot worse, but there's also clearly better examples of this genre of movie.
Yeah, and I feel like this movie must have been partially paid for by the, I don't know, American Kenpo Society or something. It just feels like an advertisement for this style of martial art.
Is Kenpo a real style of martial arts, or is that something they made up for this movie?
I think
idea.
it is real, but it's like not a I don't want to say an ancient martial art, but it doesn't have like really super deep roots. I feel like it's probably started, and I didn't look a Wikipedia article up for what that's worth, but I feel like it's probably more like an 80s kind of thing. I think it's an American martial art. So it's like a martial arts system that was developed in the US. And to also mention, this movie, you can't watch this for free anywhere, supposedly. So we've only been able to find that you can only rent it. You can rent it for about $4 on Apple TV, on Amazon, on Vudu, or you can buy it for $10 on all those same platforms.
American Kenpo Karate, also known as Ed Parker's Kenpo Karate, American Kenpo and Kenpo Karate are all-inclusive martial arts systems based on or applying ancient martial arts methods to modern-day scenarios, beating the shit out of your couch.
Yeah. And what is Ed Kemper? Not Ed Kemper.
That would be funny.
Yeah, he's developed this.
Yeah, with his mother. So,
what's the name? Ed what?
Ed Parker.
Okay, yeah, he gets a in memoriam kind of thing at the end. It's dedicated to him, I think, this movie.
Ed Kemper would have been a twist if he popped up in this movie. History started in 1933.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know.
So it's actually a lot older.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of skimming through here. I don't really think you want me to read this entire Wikipedia article.
No, I think that's even enough for me.
Yeah. Okay. Got anything else we want to add with this? It's probably going to be a little bit shorter of an episode just because
it is what it is.
Well,
no, I'm good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all we got this week then. Again, find this movie if you want. I'd be willing to bet that this one probably makes the rounds every other month on Tubi or Pluto.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Pluto.
You know, those good free services. I got to think this movie pops up there from time to time. I highly doubt that Paramount's guarding this with, well, some sticks that they're going to beat the shit out of people for trying to watch. It's worth checking out whenever it pops up. Pop it in, watch it. If you've seen this movie, though, give us some feedback. Let us know what you thought about this movie. You could throw it in either the comments on our website at crap.town. You can put it in the comments on any of our social media posts, which are always at Dewey Podmonster. You can even leave us a voicemail and we can replay those comments if you choose at crap.town. And then you can also follow Sean at his
crap.town
home on the internet, which is crap.town, and wherever else he wants to tell you about.
You can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com, where I cover Michigan craft beer. Been doing a lot of interviews, going out and checking places out to tell you guys the story behind these places, these breweries, these beer establishments. You can also find me on the social media at Draft Therapy. And don't forget to join us next week for the conclusion of Crummy Movie March.
Aloha.
Mahalo.
That's it. Aloha. Mahalo. Karate. All right. That's all I got.
Attack, front to back, in this thing called rap. Nigga like a double round double on a heavenly level. Bang the bass, turn up the treble. Blast on my day and night all the time. 714, flies the line. Maniac, radiac, winning the game. I'm the lyrical Jesse James.
Schwarzenegger, of course, owned the summer of '91. Can't stop Arnold. You can't. He is living the American dream. Think about it. Grew up in a small country, read in the back of a comic book, you could pump iron, come to America. He pumps way too much iron, comes to America. Now, he's the #1 box office draw worldwide. Makes about $15 million a movie, plus he's nailing a Kennedy. So come on, if that's not the American dream. I don't know. The worst thing about Arnold is that he's spawning all these Schwarzenegger wannabes. Steven Seagal. Where the hell did this guy come from? You know, at one point he was little Stevie Seagal getting his butt kicked around the playground. I saw one of his movies, Marked for Death. Should have been called Marked for Cable. This was not a good film. Last year we had a new entry into the muscle actors, Jeff Speakman, the perfect weapon. You see this guy? What the hell kind of a name is this for an action hero, Jeff Speakman? Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, Jeff Speakman! It's the Kung Fu Jew. Oh, wait, stop with the kicking, stop with the kicking! Speakman's back, and he's nauseous. In, stop with the kicking.